Hello to everyone and welcome to the next edition of Lviv International Talks. And I welcome here our distinguished guest today in the studio, the ambassador of Switzerland, Felix Baumann.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to Lviv. I suppose it's your first official visit here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome. Yes, it's my first official visit to Lviv.
We'll talk more about Lviv a little bit later and about the projects of Switzerland here in Lviv and Lviv region. But I would like to start with something that is more vital for and more important for all of us, the war-related things. And I know that in July this year there's going to happen a big conference with probably 100 countries, if I'm correct, about the future peace for Ukraine. Can you tell a few words about it?
Yes, that's right. The summit will be held in Switzerland in June, and it will be actually hosted by the president of the Swiss Confederation, Viola Amherd. And the aim of the summit will be to have a dialogue, yes, between as many countries as possible on ways how to achieve a comprehensive, just and lasting peace for Ukraine, but at the same time also to create a common understanding of what a future framework favorable precisely to this objective and a kind of a concrete roadmap for a future peace plan could look like. And of course it is this piece is about to respect international law and the cardinal values of the Charter of the United Nations.
Do you believe it will really work? Because we do have many international laws that are being neglected by Russia, absolutely. And how do you think this will work, this framework? Why it should work in the future?
Well, for the time being, of course, there are still many open issues, but that's also why it is precisely so important to gather a large group of countries to start these discussions right now.
Great. I just came back from the International Journalism Festival in Perugia in Italy, and where like all major publications, where hundreds and thousands of journalists and editors and media managers came together, and I had so many conversations. And I heard from very many colleagues from all over the world a question like, "Oh, are you ready for a ceasefire? When do you think it's going to happen? Do you think it's you can give part of your land to have a peace?" And so it means that I felt, from my perspective, a little bit kind of a fatigue from the war in Ukraine. Do you have a similar feelings, observations when you talk to your colleagues, diplomats in the West, or maybe it's different?
Well, what we see is that we live in an incredibly complex world. We have the war in Ukraine for now going on, at least in its full-scale dimension for 2 years, more than 2 years. We have a war in the Middle East. We have also in Europe, many countries face high numbers of migrants coming from into Europe. We have climate change. We have also still an economic situation that in many areas is not easy. And so I think this whole complexity is quite challenging. But when it comes to Ukraine, and now speaking just for my own country, for Switzerland, I still see a very high solidarity in the population. We can see that also we still have about 60,000 Ukrainians who are in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. It's also we see in the media. The media is still covering widely the situation and the war in Ukraine, and I guess we will come later on to this also. Of course, at a government level, our support for Ukraine remains high.
And also, we know that Russian elites always like to have their money in Western banks, and also including Switzerland, I suppose. If I'm correct, around 8 or 9 billion US dollars were frozen. These are the frozen assets in Switzerland, Russian frozen assets, as it was from in the end of last year. Do you think they might be used to help Ukraine?
Well, there are discussions going on within the EU, especially if the assets of the Russian central bank should be invested, and actually the proceeds then used for reconstruction in Ukraine. This is a complex discussion, and we follow this discussion closely. And then, depending on the outcome, the Swiss government will determine what action, if any, will be required from the Swiss side. But then also, in addition, Switzerland continues also to closely monitor or to follow other steps that are taken or that are discussed in international fora on the sanctioned Russian assets. I think, for example, particular discussions within the G7, but also within the EU with relation to the immobilized Russian state assets.
How do you see the recovery of Ukraine, and do you think it's connected with the Euro integration of Ukraine?
So I think, yeah, recovery has to be thought now, and it is, of course, it will be hugely important that the reform process moves on, and that at the same time it will result in infrastructures and services increase. And so the EU access, I think, well, Switzerland being not a member of the EU, it's not up to me to comment on this, but it's obvious that this will be a huge catalyst precisely for continuing the path of reforms, and obviously, I mean, a stable and secure European continent is a vital interest of Switzerland. And coming back to recovery, one precondition in many areas of Ukraine, those close to the front line, will be, of course, demining. To demine agricultural land, for example, but also to render, for example, access to schools, to hospitals safe for citizens and children. And so humanitarian demining is one of our key priorities of Switzerland. We have a package of 100 million euro for 4 years, including demining efforts on the ground in Kharkiv area. We will this year also expand to Kherson area. It's through a Swiss foundation, FSD, but it's also about delivering much needed equipment, machines, and also capacity building. And just 2 weeks ago, the Swiss government took the decision to foresee roughly 5 billion euro for the next 12 years, and of these 1.5 will be allotted for the next 4 years, pending approval of the Swiss Parliament, and allowing to continue all the efforts we already do in the country.
We are very thankful for this support to Switzerland, but I suppose it's not only about money, it's probably also about people's involvement too. Citizens of Switzerland come also here as volunteers, and so probably they are somehow incorporated in these projects. And what is their what are their reflections? What are their first impressions of what they do here? What they find interesting in Ukraine?
Well, let me just start with our engagement. So it did not start basically 2 years ago or even 10 years ago, but actually almost 30 years ago. And I think thanks to that, we have a large network of partners, state and civil society we're working with for all those years. And this helped us also in the last 2 years to redirect a number of projects. We intend to be a reliable partner for Ukraine, providing yes, assistance in those areas where we can really add value, but also that respond to concrete needs of Ukraine, and this is important. And yes, we do work in our programs with state institutions. We do work with a number of NGOs and civil society partners, with volunteers of Ukraine. And you're right, there are also Swiss players, Swiss private players that come here, and I think that's also a testimony of people, yes, who want to show their solidarity, who want to help in different fields. There are humanitarian workers, there are yes, deminers, there are private companies also, and for example doctors also who try to help. So this people-to-people help is also very important. I think it's also a nice testimony of the bonds between the two countries.
And are you talking with them? Do you hear any of their reflections? What they find something special about Ukraine, if there is something?
Yes, of course. They I think many of them are always impressed. That's what I hear by this the environment they find in a war, but this resilience of the Ukrainian population at large, and also of the different professional groups who want to help, and this commitment, this solidarity that is going on after all these months of war, and that's I think that what they really take back.
You mentioned also the private companies. When we went to journalism festival last week, we just prepared this special printed edition with Untold Stories from Ukraine, and we have here a conversation with co-owner, founder of Nova Posta, and he says so their warehouses being bombed, but they're still operating. They're also investing into new branches outside Ukraine in the EU. And we have many other stories of resilience of Ukrainian tech. But what about companies from outside Ukraine? What about Swiss businesses? Are they, because we see the business resilience stories in Ukraine among Ukrainians, and what about Swiss entrepreneurs? Are they investing in Ukraine? And if yes, why aren't they afraid of it?
Actually, well, first of all, there are Swiss companies in a very wide range of sectors of activity here, from food companies to pharmaceuticals to construction companies and so on. And I'm really glad to say that all of them remained after the start of the full-scale military aggression 2 years ago. They, of course, they had to readapt their business, and many suffered. Of course, that's obvious. But they showed again an extreme resilience in adapting, sometimes even in getting into new fields of activity. They kept their workforce. They still keep on paying taxes. Many also immediately engaged into projects of assistance to their communities, or humanitarian assistance as well. And I think they received a lot of support from their headquarters in Switzerland. And there are cases even of investments, yes, especially in Lviv area. And I think that's a testimony of these firms, that they believe in the future of Ukraine and of the economic activity they can perform here.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about these projects? Let's start with business projects in Lviv and Lviv region or west of Ukraine. What are they about?
Well, some are investments into existing companies, and others are, for example, also building new factories, actually new plants, which will in turn result in the possibility to hire workforce, creating jobs, and then in turn again generating taxes for the authorities to be able to deliver on key services and infrastructure.
And also, I know that you have projects so besides investing here by private companies, I know that also government of Switzerland is having projects of technical assistance in Lviv and Lviv region in terms of infrastructure, in terms of health, public health and mental health. Can you say about these projects? And
yes, I think what we see in the whole of Ukraine, this intensity of our cooperation, we see it's mirrored also here in Lviv. And I, for example, just yesterday, I met with the governor. We had a talk about the priorities for the region, and then I signed with the first deputy mayor of the city an agreement on urban mobility and public transport. And actually, one aspect of this agreement will be the delivery of 11 trams, 11 low-floor trams to Lviv from our capital, from Bern, which these trams will be delivered in early autumn, hopefully, and I will be glad to be here to see when the first tram will actually drive through the streets of Lviv, and I'm convinced this will be a very valuable addition to the fleet of Lviv trams. But then also the health sector that you mentioned, that's an important area we've been working in for much before the start of the full-scale military aggression. Mm-hmm. And for example, one is war trauma rehabilitation project that was redirected in the last years with Swiss financing. It's about providing rapid access to high quality service and rehabilitation services for the wounded and wounded civilians and veterans that were affected by the ongoing conflict. But another key area of intervention is mental health, and here also it's about mitigating, the effects of the war on those people afflicted by mental health diseases. In order also with the same to find, of course, high quality and rapid access to services. And then yesterday, yes, it was also my aim to visit one business where the biggest investor is Swiss. So we had a talk about the business perspectives for the region, and especially the prospects for small and medium enterprises. That's also a domain we are involved. And then finally, I had a talk in the late afternoon with BUR, Budujemo Ukrainu Razom, with civil society, and I must say I was really impressed by these young people, because it's about them helping, volunteering to reconstruct. To do reconstruction in war-torn communities, but it goes much beyond this. It's also about developing trust, I think, in cohesion in society, and also to create a community of responsible and capable youth. And I must say, yes, this was really I was very inspired by this conversation yesterday.
So do you see this special force, special power of Ukraine in combination of businesses and civil society, especially at the local level?
Well, what always I think let's start it that way. I think for an ambassador in Kiev, it's important to get out of the capital. You know, to visit the different regions of Ukraine. I was in Kharkiv. I was in Zaporizhia. I was in Kherson Oblast, and now recently I was in Chernivtsi and now in Lviv. I've been to Vinnytsia also. And what is a key, and that's maybe what renders the situation unique in Ukraine is the needs are of course they are totally different in the different areas. And so as Switzerland, for example, we intervene we're one of the few countries to have humanitarian assistance of our own. That means we implement directly own projects with our own teams, which allows us to be fast and deliver. I mean, the kind of assistance that communities really need in the close to the front line. And I have basically every week I have colleagues from the embassy who travel to these areas. Even this week we have again two missions to these areas. And then in the western part, yes, you have investments by private business. And then you have a whole range of cooperation projects from digitalization and the ones we mentioned before, health. Also very important, we support still governance and decentralization in Ukraine. And yes, again, I think we work with a wide variety of partners, and civil society is a very important one.
What do you think should be the role of communities, hromadas, in the further recovery of Ukraine and rebuilding?
Well, you know, as a Swiss, we have our regions, or cantons as we call them, and our municipalities. They have strong identities, and they enjoy actually a large autonomy. And in Switzerland, this autonomy basically does not go from the federal state to the communities, but it's rather the other way around. I mean, the federal state does what the communities have delegated to the federal level. So in Swiss history, over the centuries and decades, it was always about protecting minorities, but at the same time also to ensure that minorities are included into the political process. And that was about religions. It's of course about national languages also. So in a way it was quite natural for Switzerland to support also decentralization efforts in Ukraine. And as most experts will acknowledge, I mean, this decentralization was key in communities being so resilient to address the effects of the full scale military aggression. So we will pursue this support for decentralization, and at the same time also yes, community level organizations, NGOs, civil society, they play a very important role in this.
In terms of that, as we are talking now also about not only about geopolitical issues, but also we get here to the local level in our conversation, I'd like to ask you about you mentioned about the trams from Bern. As I remember, Bern is a very pedestrian city and very environmentally friendly city, because you see almost no cars there, but you see trams and you see lots of bikes. What do you think should be? Do you think there should be a vision of how to develop the cities of Ukraine now to have this recovery as efficient as possible? Because we often hear this quote, this message, let's build Ukraine, rebuild Ukraine better, back better. I suppose it's very different for the cities that were destroyed by Russians in the east and south of Ukraine, and also the cities in the west of Ukraine, which are more or less in a much better shape. but still economically having lots of challenges. Do you think we should think of the vision and strategy of how to develop the cities, how to rebuild Ukraine back better on the local level?
Well, the agreement we signed yesterday is actually goes beyond the trams. It's precisely about mobility, urban mobility in general, and about what like a master plan could be in the future for mobility. And that's, of course, also the complementarity about different means of transport, from local trains to trams, buses and trolleybuses, to biking, to pedestrian zones. It's also about capacity building in this field. And I think here, well, probably all cities in a way we face the same challenges. And as far as I understood yesterday, well, Lviv faces it's a chance and a challenge. The number of people that came found refuge in Lviv from other areas of Ukraine. I mean, maybe some will go back, but some will maybe also stay, and that means there is an increase in population, and that of course needs further infrastructure in the mobility field. And you cannot just get that by cars. I mean, then of course the city will not cope with it. So it will be one of the goals and challenges in the coming years to think of how making the public transport system performant and capable to face this increase demand in mobility. And then it's certainly about the complementarity of different modes of transport. But I have a bit the impression that's a trend that we face in all over Europe. Actually, I think all cities have a bit the same challenges, especially also those that have like Lviv had before the war, rely heavily on tourism, with many visitors, and to have here to develop concepts that are sustainable.
So now you mean that now we need to do something more for the citizens of Lviv, and not only just for tourists, because for tourists it was enough to have Rynok Square and nice cafes and restaurants around. But if we have a bigger city with more people and mainly local citizens, that means they need this infrastructure quite strongly. I remember I moderated probably a week or two ago a discussion roundtable of the national level scale on public transport development in Ukraine and its strategies. And some of the speakers said they rely on Western expertise support, and mainly they mentioned Switzerland, that probably Switzerland could somehow help with also this expertise of strategies, not just trams and beyond, as you mentioned, but also about bringing the minds and bringing your experience of shaping the city's infrastructure.
Yes, indeed, Switzerland has a long tradition of public transport. We're probably one of the countries most fond of our railways. I think the Swiss, I mean, almost love their railways, and it's probably one of the populations in Europe that spends most, or how to say, who travels most kilometers per year in public transport. But well, beyond this, yes, it's true. We have a lot of expertise from planning to suppliers in all kind of fields, from the technical level, at the infrastructure level, signalization level, hardware, software. For example, we have a project which we supported Ukrainian railways with rail fasteners, which allows to renovate tracks. We had such a project for almost 400 kilometers of tracks last year, and there will be a second phase this year. But yes, I mean that's something we do. For example, in Vinnytsia, there was such support of urban city planners.
So do you think this could be something that there is a possibility of probably in the future of some bigger projects, not only like Vinnytsia, Lviv, but maybe something on a national scale involving different cities and different stakeholders?
I guess, well, the mobility of the future is about interconnecting different modes of transport, of having an efficient and fast railway system between the major centers, and then having efficient public transport in the level of the regional and local level, and then of course yes, the complement within the urban space with biking and pedestrian zones. And I think all of this should somehow go together and be a coherent approach to a mobility. And to come back to your former question, yes, that responds in a way to the needs of people, of the economy also. I mean, not forget about cargo and freight, and I think for Ukraine this is extremely important, and at the same time of also visitors, yes, of tourists coming to visit the country or its cities.
Before this interview, we had a short conversation about local food, about different local attributes. What do you see that is getting more now popular in Western Europe? Do you see this is something we should develop in Ukraine? Because I know you traveled to different cities of Ukraine, though you've been not that long here, but already know the vibe of Чернівці, Vinnytsia, Lviv, Kherson. What would you recommend here from the Swiss perspective and experience?
Well, it basically it's an interesting question. It reminds me about the very first question that you asked. Yes, we live in a very complex world with many challenges, and many people feel somehow overwhelmed by the wars and the climate and the financial issues, the kind of also digitalization, the pressure on the workforce and on the work life, and so on and so forth. And so it seems to me there is a kind of quest to value more local traditions and where one is from, its identity, its culture. And so yes, food is certainly a very powerful a driver, and yes, Ukraine is also one of these countries. I mean, in that way similar to Switzerland, I think very fond and proud of its culture and traditions, and with a huge variety also of local traditions. And so I mean, for me at least, it's always a huge pleasure, yes, to discover different traditions, including culinary traditions from one city to another.
Is there something special in Ukrainian food that you already enjoyed, loved?
Well, of course, there are the classicals like varyeniki and borscht, obviously. But I just, for example, Lviv impressed me because of, well, of course, it's linked to the history of the city, but this mix of different culinary influences, and for example, I was trying yesterday night Gefільте fish, and so I guess that's again something that you will not find elsewhere necessarily in Ukraine. So I think that's is yes, in each town I visit, there is something new to discover.
We can enjoy all the food, all the public transport, and which we hope will be better and better in Ukraine, and everything else absolutely fully after victory, because that's where that's the moment when we can at least have some moment of where we can enjoy a little bit. How do you see the Ukrainian victory?
Well, what we are now is still in a period of uncertainty, and it's very difficult to predict where we will be in 1 month, in 2 months exactly. But what is important for us is to convey this message to Ukraine, that we support Ukraine. We want, as I said before, to be and to remain a reliable partner to Ukraine, also over the long run. That means also in multi-year financial commitments. That means what we decide we deliver, and relying on these very different needs. Where in some areas you have to provide humanitarian assistance to cover the basic needs due to the war. And in others, you move on to cooperation projects, or you start thinking about recovery. And
thank you for this, for these advices. Thank you for your support of Switzerland for Ukraine and future Ukrainian victory. We do hope to have it as soon as possible. And thank you for this light conversation in the light time when we have when the Jewish Jewish community is celebrating Pesach, and the Christians of Ukraine will celebrate Easter very soon. So this conversation should enlighten us, and I do hope that your future projects will be effective and will help develop both Lviv region and Ukraine, and will really build back it better.
Thank you also from my side. Thank you so much for this opportunity and this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.